Hi class, welcome to our second video on friendship and love. And in this video, you're going to be learning about friendship. So what will you be learning about friendship? Well, you're going to learn about what the research has to say about what makes a good friend. You'll also learn about some of the key gender and sexual orientation differences in friendships. And then you're going to be learning about the friendship repair ritual as a way of dealing with conflict in friendships. So let's get started. So in other countries, men may have more intimate relationships. So in the United States, men, because they're more socialized to be self-sufficient, then this would limit self-disclosure. And unfortunately, because we do still see some negative attitudes from men towards homosexuality and from some men. Certainly we're seeing this change, but we do still see this. And so for some men, they may fear having that, they may fear self-disclosure because of homosexuality or being viewed as homosexual. And then also, again, like I mentioned a few moments ago, men tend to see each other as competitors, whereas women want to have this reciprocity. Let's take a moment to reflect. So in the chapter coverage of gender and friendships, it notes that it's likely that women's friendships are closer and more satisfying because they involve more self-disclosure, talking about personal problems, people, relationships, and feelings in comparison to conversations within men's friendships. So, do you think that men's friendships are less satisfying, or do men and women just take different paths in forming equally close friendships among themselves? And how so? I think it's important as we think about this question for us to think about some of the differences between male and female friendships and what the research has to say about these differences.
So what the research suggests is that overall, women do tend to be a bit more demanding when it comes to friendship. So females seek a strong emotional attachment with both the women and men that they choose as their friends. And then women are also more likely to want frequent contact with someone that they consider to be their friend. Whereas male to male friendships tend to be more casual than female to female friendships. And many men will consider someone a friend even if they're not maintaining or staying in constant contact. Something else I think is interesting is that what the research suggests is that men are more likely to use humor to taunt a friend, and they see this as innocent fun, whereas women are more likely to refrain from this taunting and poking fun at someone else out of fear that this might hurt their friend's feelings. And I think it's also interesting to note that based on the research, male to male friendships tend to be less fragile than women to women friendships. Men are more likely to stay friends after an argument, whereas women are not as likely to stay friends when compared to men. I'd ask you to reflect in your mind as you think about this. Why do you think that there are these friendship differences? And do these differences cause differences in the level, like I have here in this reflection question, of satisfaction? Or is it that men and women just have different preferences and that they have the same level of satisfaction? I think it is interesting for us to think about why men and women may have these different patterns. What is it that has contributed to this? Is it something in our biology, in our genetics, that makes us more likely, for example, as women, to seek emotional support and to, or at least seek more emotional support typically than men do? And I think it's interesting also for us to think about some of our early experiences. So think about the friendships that you developed when you were a child. What types of friendships did you develop? And were they affected by some of your parents' patterns of behavior? So were you learning these behaviors from your parents? And were you observing, for example, a male in your life and then imitating that behavior, maybe a significant male or a significant female? Or did you choose friends instead of based on what you've observed from significant people in your life, but maybe based on common interests? So maybe common interest in sports or in other types of interests. And then this then led to some social learning. So it's interesting for us to think about where these differences may come from.
Also, when we think about gender and sexual orientation issues in friendship, boundaries between friendship and love relationships are more complex in gay relationships. And lesbians and gay men are more likely to maintain social contact with former sex partners than heterosexual men and women. And I also want to point out here that the size of gay and lesbian social networks is smaller than it is among heterosexual men and women. And very unfortunately, there often is less support from families and society. We'll be looking at these variables later in the semester when we think about depression and anxiety and some disparities in rates of these of depression and anxiety and other disorders, and even health issues we've looked at earlier as it relates to sexual orientation. So friendship is clearly very important, and because we know that when we have friends, these are friends are buffers to loneliness. We're going to be talking about loneliness here in just a little bit, but so friendships are buffers to that. In addition, we know that friendship is so important for mental health. It is important because friends provide social support. They provide us with with someone to talk to. Sometimes if we have a financial need, our friend may be there to help with that, perhaps to help with something that we need, just general help with. Perhaps you're moving from one apartment to another, or you have a question about your homework. So friends serve a very important purpose. So when we have conflict in a friendship, it can feel very scary, and it can feel really bad. And we know that we generally want to maintain the friendship with someone that, perhaps we've had a conflict with. Of course, that depends on the conflict and the underlying reasons why. And we don't necessarily always want to maintain that friendship. But there are 3 steps to repair conflict. And one is reproach. And this is where the offended party confronts the offender and they ask for an explanation. And it's so important that the offender takes responsibility and does not try to blame the person who is who's offended, that they accept responsibility and that they offer an apology. That really helps to reduce that tension and the anger that the other person has. It doesn't mean that it eliminates it, but it helps to reduce that. And then acknowledgement, where that friend, that offended party accepts the apology and the friendship continues. And you can see here the rules of friendship. I think most of you know these things, but these are very basic, important characteristics of friends. And I think that these are things that parents will often, work to instill in their children. Children learn these things naturally in a social context, but they also learn these things by, through parental interactions as they share experiences at school with their parents, and then parents, talk with them. And then also modeling this behavior for their children can be very important so that later children also have healthy relationships themselves.
I only have one test yourself question for this section. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be reading and studying this section of your textbook. You definitely need to, but I just wanted to put this one out here to encourage you to think about the friendship repair ritual. But please note that you should be reading all of the section on friendship. So here we have Yesenia, and she betrayed Maria's trust by posting an unflattering video of Maria to Snapchat without her knowing. So in the morning, Maria received many texts about the incident, and Maria called Yesenia, but she failed to pick up her phone. Maria asked for an explanation as to why this embarrassing situation happened. So according to Kahn's friendship repair ritual, which step is being demonstrated here? Is it reproach, remedy, acknowledgement, or assessment? If you selected acknowledgement, you're right. So acknowledgement is a very important part of the friendship repair ritual. We have to acknowledge the things that we've done that have offended our friends or hurt our friends. We can't just skip past those things if we want to maintain that connection. So what have you learned about friendship? Well, you've learned about the research on what makes a good friend. You've also learned about some of the key gender and sexual orientation differences in friendships and the friendship repair ritual as a way of dealing with conflict in relationships. What will you be learning about next? Well, in the next video, you're going to be learning about romantic love. You'll learn about some of the gender differences regarding love and some of the research findings on the experience of love in gay and straight couples. You'll also learn about Sternberg's triangular theory of love and the theory of adult attachment styles. I think this is so interesting, and I hope that you'll find it as interesting and fascinating as I do. It really can help us to think about our current ways of approaching both romantic relationships and friendships, how those early experiences can have some longer-term potential effects for each of us. You'll also learn about the course of romantic love over time, including what couples go through as they dissolve a relationship. And then you'll end off by learning about why relationships fail and what couples can do to help relationships to last. As always, if you have any questions about the material, anything that you would like to talk about related to this course or anything at all, if I can help you in any way, please don't hesitate to let me know. Please don't hesitate to reach out. I look forward to seeing each of you online.